Welcome, dear subscribers, and to those who are visiting my channel for the first time. I've prepared a collection of 6 terrifying stories set in the middle of nowhere. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
I took a wrong turn on a Nevada desert highway, and that's how it started. My phone had lost service an hour before. The map on my dash was just a blue dot on a blank grid. The sign I saw was so old and sun-bleached I couldn't read it, but the road looked paved, so I turned. The pavement ended about 2 miles in, becoming hard-packed dirt. I figured I'd just turn around, but when I stopped and tried to reverse, my rear tire sank right into what looked like solid ground. It was soft, powdery silt. I was stuck. I got out to look. The sun was going down and the temperature was dropping fast. I had half a bottle of water and an old jacket. I started trying to dig the tires out with my hands. That's when I saw the truck. It was parked way off the road, maybe 200 yards into the scrub. An old, boxy Ford. No one was around. I yelled a few times. Nothing. I walked toward it, thinking maybe there were tools. The driver's side door was open. The keys were in the ignition. The seat was stained dark in a way I didn't want to think about. There was no one in the cab. In the truck bed was a pile of those big burlap sacks, the kind for grain or potatoes. One of them was torn open. It was full of softball-sized rocks. I heard a sound then, a scrape, like something heavy being dragged over dirt. It came from behind a low ridge of rock to my left. I called out, "Hello?" The dragging stopped. A man's voice answered. It was flat, tired. "You're stuck." He stood up from behind the rocks. He was tall, thin, wearing jeans and a work shirt. He had a shovel in his hand. He didn't smile, he just stared. "Yeah," I said. "My tires sank in. I was hoping maybe you had a tow strap or something." "I can help you," he said. He didn't move. "But you'll have to wait a bit. I'm not finished here." "Not finished with what?" He looked past me at his truck. "My work. It'll be dark soon. You should wait in your car. It's safer. There are snakes." Everything in me said to run. But run where? I was miles from the highway, stuck. So I nodded. "Okay, I'll wait." "Good," he said. He lifted the shovel and dropped it again. The metal head hit something in the dirt behind the rock with a thick sound. He kept looking at me. I walked back to my car, trying not to hurry. My skin felt cold. I got in and locked the doors. I watched him in my rear-view mirror. He went back behind the rocks. I could see the top of his head and his shoulders moving. He was digging. For 20 minutes he dug. The light was fading to a deep blue. He would stop, walk to his truck, and lift one of those heavy burlap sacks. He'd carry it behind the rocks. I'd hear the rocks dump out, a cascading sound. Then he'd start digging again. He did this 3 times. Then he stopped. He walked to his truck and got something from the cab. He started walking toward my car. He had a tire iron in his hand. He didn't walk fast. It was a steady, direct walk. He came right up to my driver's side window. He stood there, looking in at me. He tapped the glass with the end of the tire iron. Tap, tap, tap. I couldn't start the car. The wheels would just spin. I was crying. I fumbled for my phone, knowing it was useless. He spoke, his voice muffled by the glass. "I need you to get out now." I shook my head. "He has to finish before dark," he said, like he was explaining a chore. "The ground's harder over here. I need your car. It's heavier than the sacks. It'll sink better." He raised the tire iron to swing at the window. I did the only thing I could think of. I slammed the car into drive instead of reverse, and I floored it. The car lurched forward, away from him, deeper into the desert, away from the highway. The tires caught on harder dirt. I was moving. He didn't run after me. He just watched me go. I drove in a wide, desperate circle, the headlights now on, cutting through the twilight. I aimed back toward the way I came, toward his truck. As I bounced past it, I saw the hole he'd been digging. It was deep and wide. Next to it was a pile of those burlap sacks, and next to that was something else, something wrapped in thick, clear plastic. The shape inside was all wrong. I didn't stop looking. I just kept driving, finding firmer ground, until I saw the old pavement. I got back to the highway an hour later. When a state trooper finally stopped for my frantic waving, I told him everything. They found the man, still there. They found the hole. They found what was in the plastic. And they never did tell me who it was, but the trooper did say one thing. He said the man had told them he was just cleaning up the desert. He said he was tired of people leaving their trash out there. The trooper looked at me and said he wasn't talking about beer cans. I don't drive on back roads anymore. Anywhere.
My friend Mark talked me into a fishing trip deep in the Pacific Northwest. He said he knew a spot, a real hidden lake, no people. He was right about the no people part. We hiked for most of a day with our gear. The woods were so thick the light came through green and dim even at noon. We found the lake, flat and still like a sheet of metal. On the far shore we saw a small cabin. It looked shut up tight, no smoke from the chimney. We set up our tent on our side, away from it. The first night we heard something, not an animal. It was a thump against the outside of our tent, just once. We shone our lights out, saw nothing. Mark said it was probably a raccoon. We didn't sleep much. The next morning our fishing lines were gone. We'd left them tied to a branch at the water's edge with the hooks in the water. The ropes were cut clean, not chewed, cut. Our spare fishing rod was also gone from where we'd leaned it against a tree. We started arguing then. Mark said it was bears. I said bears don't use knives. We decided to pack up and leave that afternoon. That's when we found the first photo. It was a Polaroid, the old kind. It was wedged into the tent's zipper. The photo was of Mark and me from yesterday. It was taken from the trees across our campsite. We were both bent over unpacking gear. You could see our faces clear as day. We didn't say a word. We just started shoving everything into our packs. My hands were shaking. As we were leaving, I saw the second photo. It was pinned to a tree on the trail out with a small knife. This one was from last night. It was a picture of our tent with the light on inside. You could see our shadows inside the nylon. We started to run. The trail was rough and winding. After maybe 10 minutes of crashing through brush, Mark stopped, grabbing my arm. He pointed. On the ground, in the middle of the path, was a neat pile of our things, the stolen fishing lines, our spare rod, a can of beans from our food bag, and 3 more Polaroids. The first photo was a close-up of the cabin's front door from last night. The second was of the lake at dawn, with our tent in the background. The third was of me. I was alone at the lake's edge that morning, washing my face. The photo was taken from maybe 20 feet behind me. At the bottom of the pile was a note. It was written in small, careful pencil letters on a piece of brown paper bag. It said, "You're using my spot. You have to pay the fee." Mark yelled into the trees, "What do you want? We're leaving. Take your spot." The woods were silent. Too silent. No birds. "The fee," I said, my voice tight. "What's the fee?" Another Polaroid fluttered down from the branches above us. It landed face up. It was a picture of Mark from just a moment ago when he was yelling. His mouth was open, his face red. A man's voice came from somewhere to our left. It was soft, almost polite. "The fee is one of you stays for the fishing. You took my fish. I need bait." Mark and I looked at each other. For one horrible second, I saw it in his eyes, the calculation, the measurement of fear and friendship. He saw it in mine too. We both ran, not together. We split up. It was pure panic. I heard Mark crashing through the ferns to the right. I went left, sliding down a muddy slope. I heard a shout, then a sound like a fall. Then I heard nothing but my own breathing and my feet pounding. I didn't stop for hours. I didn't follow the trail. I just went downhill toward what I hoped was a river or a road. I found a logging road as it got dark and followed it until I saw headlights. I flagged down a truck. The driver called the sheriff. They found Mark 2 days later. He was in the lake, in the deep water off the rocky point. The sheriff asked me a lot of questions about the cabin. They went to check it. He said the door was locked from the inside. They broke it down. The place was empty of people, but on the walls, pinned up everywhere, were hundreds of Polaroids, pictures of the lake at different times, pictures of animals, and pictures of people, other hikers and fishermen from over the years, some smiling, some unaware. In the center of the main room was a wooden table. On it was one of our empty fishing line spools, a knife, and an old broken camera. They never found the man who took the pictures. The sheriff told me they've had reports for years about things going missing in that area, photos left behind. He said I was lucky I ran when I did. He didn't say what he thought happened to Mark. He didn't have to. I think about that note. You have to pay the fee. I paid mine. I left my best friend behind. And every time I hear a camera shutter, even in a city street, I freeze because I know what it means to be chosen for someone's collection.
The job was simple. Drive from Wichita to Denver, but take the old state highways. My company wanted ground-level photos of some abandoned farm equipment for a history project. It was just me, a rental car, and a camera. By afternoon, I was so deep into the Kansas flatlands that the horizon was a perfect, unbroken line in every direction. The fields were bare, and the farmhouses were few and far between. That's when my car started making a noise, a loud, grinding knock from the engine. Then white smoke poured from under the hood. I coasted to a stop on the gravel shoulder, right in front of a long dirt driveway leading to one of those lonely farmhouses. The house was 2 stories, white paint peeling, but it looked lived in. An old pickup was parked by a barn. I had no cell service. I had no choice. I walked up the drive. A man answered my knock. He was probably 60 with a stern-lined face. He didn't smile. I explained about my car. He listened, then nodded. I have a tow chain, can drag you to the barn. My son can look at it in the morning. He's the mechanic. I was desperate. Thank you. I really appreciate it. It'll be $50 for the tow, he said. His eyes were pale and didn't blink much. And $100 for the night's lodging. We don't have a hotel for 60 miles. It was a scam, but what could I do? I agreed. He hooked my car up to his truck and pulled it into an open-sided, rusty barn. Inside, there were other cars, a few old sedans from the 80s, a newer SUV, all covered in dust. He saw me looking. My son's projects, he said, and said nothing more. The house was quiet and dark inside. He led me to a small bedroom upstairs. Dinner's at 6. Don't be late. He closed the door. I heard a key turn in the lock from the outside.
My stomach went cold. I tried the door. It was locked solid. The window looked out over the endless fields. It was a 20-foot drop to hard ground. I was trapped. At 6, the key turned. The man was there. "Come eat." The kitchen had an old wooden table. A woman, who I assumed was his wife, sat at one end. She didn't look at me. A younger man, maybe 30, with the same pale eyes, sat at the other. This was the son. He stared at me like I was a part he was trying to identify. The food was stew. It was salty and had a gamey taste. We ate in total silence. The only sounds were the clinks of spoons. After 5 minutes, the old man spoke, not to me, but to his son. "Needs belts, maybe the alternator." The son kept staring at me. "Could be, we'll know in the morning." The woman spoke, her voice a whisper. "He looks strong."
No one responded. The rest of the meal passed in silence. Afterward, the old man stood. "Back to your room. Big day tomorrow." "I'd like to call someone," I said, trying to sound firm. "Phone's out," the son said, a small smile on his lips. "Storm last week." I was led back upstairs and locked in again. I spent the night pushing a dresser against the door and looking out the window at the vast, empty dark. No lights anywhere, just this house. In the morning, the old man unlocked the door. "My son's ready to look at your car. Come on." They marched me out to the barn. My rental car was where we left it. The son had the hood up. He was poking at the engine with a wrench. He looked at me. "Need you to turn the key when I say. Get in." The old man stood behind me, very close. I got into the driver's seat. The key was in the ignition. The son bent over the engine. "Turn it," he yelled. I turned the key. The engine cranked but didn't start. Black smoke coughed out. "Again," he shouted. I turned the key again. This time the engine roared to life, then settled into a rough idle. The son slammed the hood down with a bang. He walked to the driver's side window. He was smiling now. "Just a loose hose, all fixed." The old man clapped a hand on my shoulder from outside the car. "That'll be $400 for the repair." It was robbery, but it was my way out. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my wallet. I gave him all my cash, $320. "It's all I have." The old man took it, counted it, and nodded. "Good enough." I didn't wait. I put the car in reverse and backed out fast. I sped down the gravel drive, kicking up dust. I didn't look back. When I got to the main road, I floored it. I drove for an hour before I saw another car, and 2 hours before I got a cell signal. I called the rental company, my voice cracking, telling them where the car was. It was only later, at a gas station in Colorado, that I was cleaning out the rental car. I found it under the passenger seat. It was a small leather wallet. It wasn't mine. Inside was an Illinois driver's license for a man named David Greeley. There was a photo of a woman and 2 kids, and there was a blood stain, brown and old, smeared across the family picture. I called the police in the county where the farm was. A deputy called me back a week later. He said they went out to the place. The house was empty. The cars in the barn were gone. He said the people who lived there were just a nice old family who rented rooms to travelers sometimes. He asked me if I was sure about the wallet. I told him I had it right in front of me. He got quiet. Then he said, "Mail it to us. Don't come back here, ever."
I think about that family at the table, the silence, the woman's whisper, "He looks strong." I don't know what they needed strength for, and I try not to think about what happened to the strong traveler before me, the one who left his wallet under my seat.
I was hiking a remote section of the Appalachian Trail in Maine, a solo 3-day trip. On the second afternoon, I heard it. Not an animal sound. A low, shuddering roar that got louder, then a crash that shook the ground. It came from the valley east of the ridge I was on. The sound was wrong for those woods. I knew what it was. A plane. I'm not a hero. My first thought was to mark the location on my GPS and hike out to call for help. But then I thought, what if someone is alive in there? I couldn't just walk away. I changed course and headed down the steep slope toward the sound. I found it an hour later. It was a small, single-engine plane, maybe a Cessna. It had plowed a terrible path through the trees before coming to rest against a granite outcrop. The front end was crushed, the wings were torn off. The silence was absolute. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" No answer. I moved closer, my heart hammering. The cockpit windows were cracked and spattered with dark fluid. The door on the pilot's side was bent open a few inches. I peered inside. The pilot was still in his seat. He was motionless. I didn't need to check for a pulse. The way his head was tilted told me everything. There was a suitcase in the back, burst open. Clothes were scattered. And there was money. Bundles of cash held with paper bands spilled across the seats and floor. I backed away. This was a problem. A big problem. A crashed plane with a dead guy and a suitcase of money in the middle of nowhere. I pulled out my GPS. No signal. I'd have to hike back to the trail, then out to my car, then drive to find a ranger. That was a full day, maybe more. That's when I heard the branch snap. It came from the trees behind the wreck. I spun around. "Hello?" Nothing moved. The woods were still. "I'm here to help," I yelled, my voice shaky. A man's voice answered. It was calm, low. "You're not with them." He stepped out from behind a thick pine. He was maybe 40, dressed in dark hiking clothes, not pilot clothes. He had a cut on his forehead. He held one arm close to his body like it was hurt. He wasn't looking at the plane. He was looking at me. "With who?" I asked. "I heard the crash. I came to see if I could help." "He's dead." He nodded toward the cockpit. "I already checked." "We need to get help. I have a GPS. I can lead us out." The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That's okay. I know the way. I just need to collect my things first." He walked toward the plane's bent door. "Your things?" I asked. "My luggage," he said, without turning around. He reached into the wreckage and started gathering the bundles of cash, stuffing them into a backpack he produced from somewhere in the fuselage. He worked quickly, efficiently.
This wasn't a survivor. This was someone who was supposed to be on that plane, or someone who knew what was on it. The pieces clicked into place with a sickening clarity. The crash, the money, the calm man collecting it. He finished and slung the heavy backpack over one shoulder. He looked at me. "You're a problem I didn't account for." I took a step back. "I don't know anything. I didn't see anything. I'm just leaving." "You saw the plane," he said, taking a step toward me. "You saw me. You can describe me." "I won't tell anyone." The words sounded weak even to me. "I believe you," he said. His good hand went to his belt. I didn't wait to see what was there. I ran. I crashed through the underbrush, not following any path, just going away from him. I heard him shout, then the sound of him coming after me. He was hurt, but he was fast. I was fueled by pure terror.
I fell, scrambled up, and kept running. I didn't look back. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. I hid in a tangle of fallen logs, listening. I heard him call out once, his voice farther away. "It doesn't have to be like this." Then, silence. I stayed hidden until full dark. Then, using only the stars, I navigated west. I found a stream and followed it downstream, knowing it would lead to a road eventually. I walked all night. A state trooper found me at dawn, stumbling along a dirt forestry road. I told him about the crash. I described the plane. I did not describe the man. I said I'd seen no one else. They found the wreckage later that day. The news report said it was a private plane that went missing a week earlier. The pilot was the only person on the manifest. They said he likely died on impact. They said the black box suggested engine failure. They never mentioned a passenger. They never mentioned money. A month later, a hiker found a body in those woods. The news said it was an unidentified male, deceased from exposure. They said he was found with no identification, about 5 miles from the crash site. They asked for the public's help. I didn't help. I knew who he was, and I knew he didn't die from exposure. He died because I led him on a chase through rough terrain with a broken arm and a heavy backpack, because he was more afraid of me talking than he was of the wilderness. Sometimes the thing you run from isn't the worst thing in the woods. Sometimes it's you. I left 2 men dead out there. One I never meant to. The other I meant to with every step I took.
The heat in the Arizona desert has a weight to it. It presses down on you, and the silence is just as heavy. I was there because of a deal, a bad deal. I owed money to people who don't accept apologies. My cousin told me about a guy who could make my debt disappear. All I had to do was drive a truck from a warehouse in Tucson to a drop point near the border, wait for a call, then leave the truck and walk away. He said it was electronics. I knew it wasn't electronics. I met the guy in a diner off I-10. He gave me keys and a piece of paper with GPS coordinates. No name. "You get there before sunset," he said. "You park, you wait for my call. You do not look in the back. You do not open the back. When the call comes, you get out and you walk north for 2 miles. There's a road. Someone picks you up. Your debt is cleared." The truck was an old, unmarked box truck. It was white and beat up. The back was sealed with a heavy padlock. I drove. The coordinates took me off the highway, down a county road, then onto a network of dirt trails that got narrower and dustier. Finally, I was in a wide, flat basin surrounded by low hills. There was nothing. No buildings, no signs, just scrub and rocks. It was the perfect place for nothing good. I parked where the GPS zeroed out. It was an hour before sunset. I turned the engine off. The silence rushed in. I waited. The sun dipped lower, painting everything orange and long-shadowed. That's when I heard the first thump. It came from the back of the truck, a single solid thud against the interior wall. I froze. My blood went cold. It wasn't electronics. Another thump. Then a scrabbling sound, like fingers dragging against metal. I got out of the cab. My legs were weak. I stood on the dirt, staring at the sealed rear doors. "Hello?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. The scrabbling stopped. Then a voice. It was muffled, desperate, speaking in Spanish. I know a little. The voice was saying, "Please, agua, water." I backed away. This wasn't a smuggling run. This was a coffin on wheels. They were moving people, and I was the driver. The banging started then. Not frantic, but steady, determined, a fist against the door.
Then another voice joined, then another. They were yelling now, pleading, screaming for water, for air, for help. I looked at the padlock. I looked at the empty desert. I had a gallon of water in the cab. I had my phone, but there was no signal. The guy's words echoed, "You do not open the back." The screams got worse. They were choking, gasping. The metal walls of the truck started to ping as the temperature inside rose, even as the outside air cooled. They were baking in there.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't just let them die. I found a big rock. I ran to the back of the truck. I shouted, "Stand back, I'm getting you out." I started smashing the rock against the padlock. It took a dozen blows, but the lock broke. The second the lock came off, the doors burst open from the inside. People spilled out. Men, women, maybe 8 or 9 of them. They were soaked in sweat, their faces red, gasping. They fell to the dirt, crying, hugging the ground. One man looked at me, his eyes wide with a gratitude that made me sick. I handed him my water jug. He passed it around. That's when I saw the headlights. 2 sets coming fast from the east, kicking up a huge plume of dust. The people saw them too. The gratitude in their eyes turned to pure terror. They started scrambling, trying to run into the desert, but they were weak, disoriented. The vehicles were 2 SUVs. They skidded to a stop, surrounding the truck. Men got out. They weren't wearing uniforms. They wore jeans, t-shirts, and they carried rifles. They weren't border patrol. They were the other guys. The man from the diner was with them. He didn't look at the people on the ground. He looked right at me. His face was empty of expression. "You opened the door." "I couldn't let them die," I said. "You weren't paid to think," he said. He nodded to his men. I started rounding up the people, herding them toward one of the SUVs. They didn't fight, they just went, heads down. The diner man walked up to me. "You broke the deal. Your debt isn't cleared, it's doubled, and now you have a new job." "I'm not doing anything else for you," I said, trying to sound brave. He smiled. It was a thin, cruel smile. "Sure you are. You see, we lost a truck. We lost product. We need a replacement." He looked me up and down. "The people we just picked up are worth something, but a willing American driver, that's worth more. You work for us now. You drive when we say, or we visit your mother in Phoenix. We talk to your sister in Flagstaff. You understand." I understood. I had traded one debt for a much bigger one. I had tried to be a hero, and all I did was become property. They put me in the other SUV. As we drove away, leaving the empty truck in the desert, I looked back. One of the men was pouring gasoline on it. He tossed a match. The truck went up in flames, erasing the evidence. Now, I drive for them. I don't know what's in the trucks anymore. I don't look. I just drive, wait for the call, and walk away. The heat still has a weight. The silence, too. But the heaviest thing is the key in my ignition. It doesn't start a truck. It locks a cage. And I'm the one inside it, driving myself deeper into the desert every time.
They offered me double pay to take the winter watchman job at the defunct salmon cannery in Alaska. It was a simple gig: live alone in the foreman's shack for 4 months, make sure nobody looted the equipment, and log the weather data twice a day. No power, just a propane heater, a radio for weekly check-ins, and a whole lot of silence. I figured I could handle quiet. I was wrong. The first month was okay. The silence was big, but it felt clean. The weekly radio call with the company man in Juneau was normal. Everything's fine, I'd say, cold and quiet. In the second month, the dark settled in for good. The sun just gave up. You got a few hours of gray light at noon, and that was it. The silence changed. It wasn't clean anymore. It felt thick, like it was listening back. That's when I started hearing the boards creak. The main cannery building was a long, low shed about 100 yards from my shack. It was supposed to be empty, locked, but at night I'd hear it, a long, slow creak, then another, like someone was walking across the floor inside, stepping carefully on the old wood. I told myself it was the wind, or the building contracting in the cold, but the wind didn't make footsteps. I mentioned it on my next radio call. The company man, Gary, laughed. "It's just the old place settling, or maybe a wolverine got inside. Don't worry about it." But I did worry, because a week later, I saw the door. The padlocked side door to the cannery was open, just an inch. I knew I had checked it 2 days before. The lock was still there, but it was open, hanging on the hasp. I got my shotgun. I pushed the door open and shouted inside. My voice echoed down the long building. Empty fishing gear hung from the ceiling like dead metal skeletons. The floor was dusty, and in the dust I saw footprints. They were boot prints. They led from the door into the dark back of the building. They did not come back out. I followed them, my heart in my throat. They went all the way to a back wall, to an old metal door that led down to a cold storage cellar. That door was always bolted shut from the outside. The bolt was drawn back. I didn't go down. I ran out, slammed the cannery door shut, and snapped the padlock closed. I spent the next day checking every window of my shack, piling boxes against the door. The next radio call didn't come. I tried at the scheduled time, static. I tried every hour for a day, only static. My last link to the world was dead. That night, the knocking started.
It wasn't on my door. It was on the wall. 3 slow, firm knocks on the outside wall of the shack, right behind where I sat. Then 3 more on the opposite wall. Then on the roof, a slow walking knock from one end of the roof to the other. I didn't move. I just held the shotgun, my finger on the trigger, crying silently. The knocking stopped at dawn. I was shaking, exhausted. I must have dozed off in my chair. I woke to a new sound, the sound of the propane heater shutting off, the click of the control knob being turned. I opened my eyes. The heater was across the room. Its control knob was on the floor. It had been unscrewed and removed. The heater couldn't work without it. And on the small table next to my chair, where my logbook lay, was the padlock from the cannery door. It was placed neatly on the open page next to the entry where I'd written about the footprints. Someone was inside with me. They had been in the room while I slept. They had disarmed my heat. They had left a message. I didn't scream. I didn't look around. I put on every piece of clothing I had, grabbed my shotgun, and walked out of the shack. I didn't look back. I started walking down the frozen coast toward nothing, because anywhere was better than there. A fishing boat found me 3 days later, half frozen on a gravel beach. I couldn't speak coherently. They took me to Kodiak. The company sent people to the cannery after I was rescued. Gary called me in the hospital. His voice was different. No annoyance, just a flat, careful tone. "We found the shack," he said. "The heater was broken. Your logbook was there." "And the lock?" I asked. A long pause. I could hear him breathing. "The cannery door was still locked. We had to cut the lock to get in. We checked the whole place. There was no one there." "The footprints," I whispered. "We saw no footprints in the dust," he said. His voice got very quiet. "Look,
The doctor says you have isolation sickness. You're not in trouble. Just get better. They closed the program. They never sent another winter watchman. Gary was right about one thing. The doctor did say it was a psychotic break brought on by extreme isolation. He said my mind created the intruder to explain the sounds. But the doctor didn't see the lock on the table. He didn't feel the control knob removed from the heater. He didn't have to. Sometimes, in the deep dark, your mind doesn't invent monsters. It finally notices the one that was already there. And the worst part isn't the knocking or the footprints. It's the quiet proof left behind in the daylight that says you're not crazy. It says you were sharing the silence with something that knew how to wait, how to get inside, and how to turn off the heat without making a sound.
If you liked the story, subscribe and like it, and also write a comment about what topic you would like to hear about.